So when you think of the Great Wall of China, what comes to mind? Probably this single massive stone dragon, right? Just winding its way over the mountains. But the real story is so much more complicated and honestly way more interesting than that. This isn't just one wall. It's really a saga of many walls, built over thousands of years. So let's get into the real story behind this incredible wonder.
Okay, first things first, let's just try to wrap our heads around the scale here. If you took every single section of wall ever built, I'm talking from the very first dirt mounds to the final stone fortresses, and laid them end to end, you'd get this number, over 21,000 kilometers. That's more than half the distance around the entire planet. Just let that sink in for a second. It's an absolutely mind-bending figure.
Right, so here is the biggest misconception we've got to clear up. It's not one long, unbroken wall, not at all. It's actually a gigantic defensive system. It's a whole collection of walls and trenches and even natural barriers like mountains and rivers, all built by different dynasties in totally different places over almost 2,000 years.
So you have to ask, where did this idea of one Great Wall even start? Well, to figure that out, we've got to travel way back in time, back to China's very first emperor. This was a guy who didn't just unify a nation, he then decided he had to build a wall to protect it.
You see, building walls was nothing new. For centuries, all these different warring states in China had been putting up their own fortifications to guard their borders. But then, in 221 BC, Emperor Qin Shi Huang comes along and unifies the whole country. And he had this brand new vision: connect all those old separate walls into one single unified front to keep out the nomadic tribes from the north.
And his order was pretty radical for the time. He actually commanded his people to tear down the walls that separated the old states inside his new empire. The idea was to focus every bit of effort on creating this one massive barrier on the outside. And his whole philosophy was basically use whatever you can find right there on the spot and just keep building.
Now, on the plains, where these first huge sections were built, the main building material wasn't stone, it was earth, literally the ground they were standing on. They used this ancient technique called rammed earth, and it was both super simple and, as it turns out, incredibly effective.
The process itself was brilliant, but just brutally hard work. Imagine this. Workers build these big wooden frames, pour in a few inches of soil, and then pound it down, over and over with heavy tools until it's as hard as a rock. Then they do it again, another layer, pound it down, and another, just slowly, painstakingly raising this massive wall right out of the earth.
And don't for a second think this was just some glorified mud wall that would wash away in the rain. We know now, thanks to modern science, like these seismic tests from Durham University, that this ancient technique creates a structure that's incredibly strong and durable. It just goes to show you, what might look primitive to us was actually genius engineering for its time.
Okay, now let's jump forward in time, way forward, like over 1,500 years. The Great Wall that you and I picture, the one in all the photos with the gray bricks and the watchtowers, that's largely the masterpiece of the Ming Dynasty. They took wall building to a whole different level.
The leap in technology here is just staggering. See, the Ming didn't just patch up the old earthen walls. No, they completely reimagined them. They switched from packed dirt to kiln-fired bricks and massive cut stones. And maybe most importantly, they moved the wall from the flat, easy-to-build-on plains way up onto these treacherous, jagged mountain ridges. This was a strategic move, plain and simple, a direct response to new military threats, like cannons. Suddenly, having the high ground was everything.
I mean, these Ming innovations were a total game changer. They built these composite walls with a brick shell on the outside but filled with earth or rubble on the inside to make them super stable. They built something like 25,000 watchtowers, which acted as barracks and signal stations. And get this, they even developed a special mortar using sticky rice and lime that bonded the bricks together with unbelievable strength. Yeah, sticky rice.
So here's the key takeaway about the Ming Wall. It was way more than just a barrier. It was basically an ancient information superhighway. From those beacon towers, soldiers could use smoke signals during the day and fire at night to send messages about enemy troop movements. That intelligence could be relayed across hundreds of miles back to the capital in just a few hours. Absolutely incredible.
But this architectural wonder, it came at a staggering human cost. Building the wall, no matter which dynasty was in charge, was a brutal, unforgiving, and often deadly job.
So, who were these people?
the ones who actually built it? Well, the workforce came from three main groups. You had soldiers, who were often stationed out on the frontier for their entire lives. You had peasants, who were conscripted, basically drafted and pulled away from their farms. And you had convicts, both civilian and military, who were sent to the wall to serve out their sentences doing hard labor.
The conditions were just horrific. Think about it. Dangerous construction work on sheer cliffs, extreme weather, rampant disease, not enough food. Millions are thought to have died. It's this tragic reality that led to the Great Wall's darkest nickname, the longest cemetery in the world.
And all of this immense suffering gave rise to some really powerful legends. The most famous, by far, is the story of Meng Jiangnu. As the tale goes, her husband was taken away to work on the wall just 3 days after they got married.
So she travels all the way to the frontier to bring him winter clothes, only to find out that he had already died from exhaustion and was buried somewhere inside the wall itself. She was so heartbroken that she just wept for 3 days and 3 nights. And her grief was said to be so powerful, so immense, that a huge section of the wall just crumbled and collapsed, revealing her husband's body so she could give him a proper burial. It's a story that became this timeless symbol of the people's suffering under tyranny.
Now, any structure this epic, this old, is bound to have some myths and legends spring up around it. So let's take a minute and do a little myth busting.
All right, let's start with the darkest question, one that comes directly from that longest cemetery nickname. Is it true? Were the bodies of dead workers actually mixed into the wall?
The answer, definitively, is no. It's a myth. While a truly tragic number of people died building the wall, and they were often buried in graves right next to it, archaeologists have found zero evidence, none whatsoever, that human bones were ever used as a building material. The legend almost certainly grew out of the sheer horror at the scale of death that the project caused.
Okay, and now for the most famous myth of them all. This is the one that so many of us grew up believing. Can you really see the Great Wall of China from space with just your eyes?
And again, this one is a total myth. It makes sense why people believe it. The wall is incredibly long, but it's not very wide, maybe 9 meters at its thickest. Apparently, seeing it from low Earth orbit would be like trying to spot a single human hair from 2 miles away. Astronauts have confirmed it again and again. You just can't see it without a camera and a zoom lens.
So when you pull it all together, the Great Wall is so much more than just a wall. It's like a physical history book written across the entire landscape of a country. It's this incredible, evolving story of technology, of immense political ambition, and of course, a profound monument to centuries of human sacrifice and endurance.
You know, it took generations of people, countless lives, and the iron will of multiple dynasties to create this thing. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What are we building today? What kind of monumental legacy on that kind of grand scale will our own time be remembered for?